Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz says Trump's threat to impose 30% tariffs on goods from the European Union would strike at Germany's core export industry. Merz told the German public broadcaster ARD he will work intensively with other European leaders to resolve the escalating dispute. The Chancellor stressed that the threats of tariffs are a negotiating tactic by Washington. But Merz said it would be a serious blow if the levies were imposed.
If that were to happen, we could set aside large parts of our economic strategy. It would overshadow everything and hit the core of Germany's export economy. But this is precisely why I've been traveling so much. The G7, the European Council and the NATO summit. These were already on the schedule even before I became Chancellor. So it goes without saying that I attend these meetings. I represent Germany to make sure our voice is heard and to help ensure that tariffs of this magnitude do not come into effect. That requires unity within the European Union and reasonable lines of communication with the American president.
And DW's chief political editor, Michaela Küfner, is with me in this studio. Michaela, Merz said he's going to use the time until August 1st to find a solution. What can he do?
Well, it's really keeping those communication lines open, and no matter what those initial negotiations are, what the tone of talks are, US President Donald Trump always stresses that any decision comes down to him and his decision alone. And that's why we also saw Friedrich Merz here stress his good line of communication with Donald Trump, because he's also under criticism here in Germany that he simply spent too much time abroad, just over 2 months after taking office, being elected as German Chancellor here. There was a feeling that he wasn't taking care of domestic affairs enough. And he keeps trying to make the point, well, look, this very question of tariffs will hit home very, very badly. Germany is an export economy. The United States is a very important trading partner, and most important after the European Union. So a solution needs to be found. But then the question always is, OK, if there is an agreement, how long will it last until US President Trump decides to do a different type of tariff and you start from square one?
Very unreliable. Now, as you mentioned, he is under pressure, Friedrich Merz is, because he, among many things, because he failed to secure a vote within his own party over the appointment of a judge to the Constitutional Court, which is usually a routine matter, more or less. What did he have to say about that?
Well, his line is, look, we always knew it would be very difficult to get a 2/3 majority, which is required to get the votes for these 3 judge candidates through. And that is also the reason, by the way, why he used the old majority of the old parliament, even after the election, to get the debt brake suspended, which put so much cash on the table here in Germany at the moment. Now his chief whip simply didn't do the job of getting all those votes secured, and rather than risking not getting these judges elected, which really would have been a historic first and raised a lot more questions about how political this whole process has become, his own coalition had to suspend this. The deal he'd done with his own coalition partner was no longer fulfilled by his own Conservative Party. That makes his chief whip, Jens Spahn, look weak, and that makes ultimately Friedrich Merz look unreliable to his own coalition partner, raising a lot of eyebrows and questions how stable this government will be in the long term.
Sounds like a bit of a mess, doesn't it?
It was a complete mess, but what they did is they managed to avoid a complete disaster, which would have been a dissonance within Parliament, an inability to get a judge elected. If we reach that stage, we're talking about a fully blown crisis here in terms of getting those judges elected. But for now, Germany is very far away from the very politicized process that we see in the United States, for instance.
Michaela Küfner, thank you very much. The European Union is taking a wait-and-see approach to new trade tariffs threatened by Donald Trump. The US president says he will impose 30% levies on imports from the EU and Mexico from next month. Trump blames a long-term trade deficit with the EU. European leaders want a negotiated solution, but say they will retaliate if necessary.
From the newsstands of Spain to the newspapers of Italy. There is one word on Europe's mind: tariffs. The EU, as well as Mexico, were the latest recipients of Trump's letters that he posted on his social media site, Truth Social. As the US's largest trading partners, the letters were labelled unfair and disruptive, but after months of toing and froing, they were not seen as a reason to panic.
We believe that based on what our colleagues discussed yesterday, we are going to reach an agreement with the United States government and of course achieve better terms. I have always said that in these cases, you need to keep a cool head to face any problem.
A sentiment echoed by the Irish PM.
Europe remains focused. We're not going to overreact. The bottom line is this: tariffs of this kind are not sustainable and tenable. Europe has countermeasures, doesn't want to have to deploy, would prefer a negotiated approach.
European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen responded by saying the EU remained open to negotiate, but was prepared to take all necessary steps to safeguard the bloc's interest, including reciprocal tariffs. The August 1 deadline does allow time to negotiate agreements that could lower the rate, or the President could simply change his mind.